Hey everyone, Omogonix here and welcome back to a brand new video here on the channel. This is part 2 to my tutorial series where I teach you guys about GDScript in Godot. If you haven't watched part 1, I'll leave a link in the description below so you can go check it out before or after watching this part. Before getting started, I do want to quickly mention that I'm currently making a new horror game called Mushi's Kitchen Reheated. Act 1 will be releasing on October 10th, 2024, so if you'd like to check it out when it is out, be sure to. It will be free on itch.io. So in this part today I'll be teaching the basics of variables and how you can use them when making scripts for your games. I'll also be teaching how to use delta, which is a variable part of the process functions that allows values to change consistently no matter what your frame rate is. If you do enjoy this tutorial or learn something from it, be sure to like, comment and subscribe for more. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So first off, let me explain what variables are. Variables are basically a way for us to store and represent values such as strings, integers, floats, bools, nodes, and even more stuff as well. Variables can make it easier for us to recognize certain values by giving them a label, and can also make your scripts more readable as well. Alright, so let's say for example I create two variables. We have one called a, and this equals to 5, and then we have another variable called b, which equals to 10. So when you do make variables, by the way, what you need to do is you need to first enter var, which is short for variable, and then you just simply enter your variable's name. It can be anything. You could make it, Big Chungus if you really wanted to, and then you could make it equal to, anything you really wanted to, like a number or a string. If you don't know what a string is, it's basically just text, so yeah, you can do whatever you want with your variables when it comes to naming them and stuff. So anyways, let's say for example we have two variables called a and b. So one equals to 5, another equals to 10. Now what we're going to do here in our ready function is we're going to do this. We're going to do var c. So what we're doing here is we're creating a new variable in our ready function called c, and what this will equal to is a plus b. So a, because that equals to 5, and b, because that equals to 10, when we plus them together, they're going to equal to 15. So that means that this variable here called c will now equal to 15, because that's what a and b equal to when they're added up. So what we're going to do down here is we're now going to go print, and we're now going to go print the value of c. And in order to do this, in order to print an integer, we need to go str in order to convert it into a string. Then we do parentheses and then c, and boom. So now what we're going to do is we're going to test this out, and we're going to print the value of c into the little output console here. And what c should equal to is 15, because that's what a and b equal to when they're added together. So let's go test this out. And boom, as you can see now in our output console, it says 15, because that's what c equals to. Another thing that I want to talk about is the difference between creating variables outside of functions and variables inside of functions. So if you create a variable outside of a function, like, near the top of your script, like with what we have here with a and b, basically these are like global variables in our script. So these variables here can be used in any function. However, if you create a variable inside of a function, that variable is then local to that function. So c here can only be used in the ready function. It can't be used outside of the ready function. If we want to use a variable called c in another function, we'll need to actually create a whole new variable called c in another function in order to use a variable called c. We can't use this exact same variable here from the ready function in any other function. However, if you ever did want to use a local variable outside of its local function, what you could do is you could, get like one of these global variables here, like a for example, and you could just make a equal to c, and then you can use the value of c wherever you want, because a is going to be equaling to it. So then you can use a in the process function, which will equal to c. So yeah, that's a way of doing that. So as I mentioned earlier, variables can equal to all kinds of values, including strings of text. So let's say, for example, you wanted a here to equal to Omo. So, we got a string of text which says Omo. And by the way, when you do enter strings, make sure that you do the quotation marks, that you do encase your text in quotation marks, both at the beginning and end. That is important. And so then we might have the variable b here equal to Omogonix. So here we have variable a, which equals to Omo, and variable b, which equals to Omogonix. So if we have variable c here in our ready function, which then equals to a plus b, what do you think that will equal to? Well, of course, it's going to equal to Omogonix, because we're plussing a and b together. So yeah, a equals to Omo, b equals to Omogonix, and then we plus them together, Omogonix. And then we have, a equals c, and then we print c, and boom, that should print out our name. So what we're going to do is we're going to test it out quickly. And boom, as you can see, Omogonix is printed into the console. Alright, so now let's talk about bools. So bools are basically variables that equal to either true or false. So let's say, for example, we create a variable called toggle, and we make it equal to false. What we're going to do is we're actually going to make use of our process function. So we're going to get rid of pass, and we're going to write if toggle. So what we're doing here by simply writing if toggle is we're checking if toggle equals to true. What we could also do as well is you could also do if toggle equals to true. Basically what the two exclamation mark means is that means equals to, and then we're checking if it equals to true. But the more simpler way of doing it is just by simply doing if toggle. So we're going to do if toggle and then end. So you can just simply write end afterwards. And what we're going to do as well is we're going to create a new variable up here called c. And this won't equal to anything right now, we'll just keep it empty at the moment. And we're going to check if toggle equals to true and if c doesn't equal to a. So what a equals to is Omo. So if c doesn't equal to a, then what will happen is we'll then do the two dots here and then indent. And then what will happen is we'll do c equals to a. So basically what we're doing with this part of the script is we're checking if toggle equals to true and c doesn't equal to what a equals to. What will happen is then c will then equal to a. So c will then equal to Omo basically. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to copy this part of the script. So just drag and then just select that and then go Control C, and then we're going to go down here and then we're going to press Control V to paste it. And then out the front of toggle, what you want to do is you want to put an exclamation sign, and what that means is not. So if not toggle, which basically means if toggle equals to false. Again, you could also do if toggle equals to false if you really want to write it like that, but you could also just simply do if not toggle. So the exclamation mark either means doesn't or not. So yeah, just remember that. So if toggle equals to false and c doesn't equal to b, c will equal to b. So what's going on here in our process function overall is if toggle equals to true and c doesn't equal to a, c will then equal to a. And then if toggle equals to false and c doesn't equal to b, c will then equal to b. And then what we're going to do down here is we're then going to write print and then str to convert it to a string. Wait, no, it already is a string, so we won't need to convert it. So we can just do print c, and then what that will do is it will then print what c equals to. In fact, I'm actually going to move print c inside of these if checks here. So what you want to do is you just want to put print c inside of these if checks, and the reason as to why is so then print c isn't printing every single frame, so then it only prints when it actually needs to, so when the values are changing. So when c equals to a, print c will then happen, and then once toggle doesn't equal to true anymore, and C doesn't equal to B, C will then equal to B, and then print C will then get printed. So yeah, that's why we're going to be including print C inside of these if checks. It's because so then it doesn't print every frame, it only prints when it actually needs to be printed. So yeah. So what we're going to do in order to actually change the value of toggle, because it's just currently equal to false, you might be thinking to yourself, well, how are we going to change that? Well, what we're going to do is we're actually going to be making a timer using the delta variable here. So what delta is this basically makes sure that values change consistently no matter what your frame rate is. It explains here in this comment when you do create a new script and you have your default function set up. Usually you have these two comments explaining what the ready and process functions are. For the process function, it says called every frame, basically meaning that the process function happens every frame, and delta is the elapsed time since the previous frame. So this basically delta allows us to keep things consistent no matter what the frame rate is. So what I'm going to do is we're actually going to create a new variable up here, and it will be called timer, and this will equal to 0. And what we're going to do is we're going to do if timer less than 1, 2 dots here. What will happen is we'll do timer plus equals 1 times delta. So what is going on here is the timer is plussing onto what it already equals to. So the timer currently equals to 0. So, as the timer is plussing onto itself, it's going to continue to add on to its value. And basically, we're doing 1 times delta because this is basically going to make the timer go up in real time. Because basically, 1 will be meaning 1 second. So every single second, our timer will go up. So if the timer is less than 1 second, the timer will be going up. However, if timer is over or equal to 1, timer will then equal to 0 again. So basically then the timer is just simply resetting itself. And what we're going to do here is if the timer is over or equal to 1 as well, we're going to be doing toggle equals to not toggle. So what this means is toggle will equal to the opposite of what it currently equals to. So if toggle equals to false, toggle will now equal to true. And that's what's going to allow us to change our toggle value for this script to properly work. So now that everything is done, let's now test it out, and fingers crossed it all works out. So let's just pay attention to our console, and boom, as you can see, every single second in our output console, we're getting Omo and Gonix printed out. So this is happening every single second since our timer, every single second is changing the value of toggle. So if you've used Unity before and you have a bit of knowledge with Unity C#, you probably know about public variables. Well, in Godot you can do something very similar. So if you don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to like public variables, well, what I mean is basically variables that you can edit outside of your script. So with all these values right here, right now I can only edit them inside of my script. So if I want to change the value of timer here from 0 to something else, I need to physically change it from inside of my script to something else. So I could change it to 6 or 10 by entering a value into this script. However, if I want to edit it outside of the script in the inspector menu, for example, what you do is you go at export out the front of a variable, and now as you can see with the inspector menu, if you have your node with your script attached selected, you will now see in the inspector menu that variable can now be edited outside of the script. So now you don't actually have to go through your scripts to change certain values that you might want to edit publicly. So if you have certain values like, the speed of a character, for example, or certain other values that you think, you might want to edit outside of the script, so then it, saves you time and stuff like that, well, yeah, you can just simply do at export out the front of a variable, and then you can edit it outside of the script. So, we'll do the same with Omo here, this string variable. And yeah, so now we have our string variable called a, which is now public, and we can just edit this as we wish. So if I wanted this to equal to, YOLO, and then we have the timer, we'll keep that equaling to 0, but we could change Gonix, go add export Gonix. We can even, export the bool. So now we can actually, change the value from true or false in the inspector menu for our toggle here. So yeah. So if you ever want to make it so then you can edit your variables outside of your script, and so then you can just simply edit them by selecting your node in the scene, and then you can go to your inspector menu and just edit them here, well yeah, you can do that if you want to. So I'm just going to, play around with this here. I'm just going to enter in some random jarble, and then we're going to test it out. And as you can see, these new values that I entered into the inspector menu are now being printed into the console here when I run the script. Now, if you actually look into the script here, as you can see inside of the script, A equals to Omo and B equals to Gonix still. However, in the inspector menu, it now equals to something else, because this is what the general script will equal to, right? Like A will equal to, Omo at first, and B will equal to Gonix at first. However, if you've edited the values in the inspector menu, when you start your game, those values will then, take into effect. So basically, A and B equaling to Omo and Gonix in the script basically means that these are like the default values for A and B. And when you do change, when you do like export variables and then you change them in the inspector menu, you'll see that there's like this reset button here, and if you press this, it will reset them to their original values. So when I reset A just then, it reset back to Omo, and when I reset B, it reset back to Gonix, because they're the default values in the script. So yeah. And also, if you want to like make a variable for like the max amount of time the timer goes for, because right now it's set to 1, right? So if the time is less than 1, then the time will continue. So if you want to change this, what you could do is we could create a whole new variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to not export the timer variable, since there's no reason to export that. However, we'll create a new exported variable. So we'll go at export var, and we're going to call this max_time. And this will equal to 1.0 at first. So 1.0 is a float. Basically, in case you don't know what a float is, it's basically, a number with a decimal point, and then integers, they're like whole numbers. So yeah. So here we have the max time. So max time, if you want to change this, you can. I'm going to set it to 5 as an example. So what we're going to do here is, where it says timer less than 1, we're going to change 1 to max time. So now we're checking if timer is less than the value of max time. And then, as I said before, you can also create a variable for the the rate of which the timer goes up as well. Like if you want to make a thing called, I don't know, time rate or something like that, you want to create a variable like that, you can if you want to. For now, I'm just going to leave it as plus equals 1 though. So yeah. So now if we go test the script, what should happen is every 5 seconds the value of toggle will change instead of it being every single second. Something else which I just forgot to do as well is I forgot to change if timer over equal to 1. I forgot to change that to if timer over equal to max time. That's another thing which I just forgot to do there. I just tested the script before just then. I was like, it's still going up every second. Then I realized, oh wait a second, now I know why. So yeah. So what we're going to do now is we're going to test again, and now every single 5 seconds it should go up. And boom, so 5 seconds just passed, and then a new string was printed into the console. So now the rate of strings getting printed into the console is a lot slower than before. So whilst variables can equal to something, they can also equal to nothing as well. So if you want a variable to equal to nothing, you can either just do what I did here with the C variable and just write var C, or if you want to, change the value of something to null at runtime during your script, you could do something like C equals null. So what null means is just nothing. Now, the thing about null values in variables is they can cause errors. So let's say, for example, you're checking for a particular value or something in a variable, but then, it turns out that variable just equals to nothing. It's not even, got a type attached to it or anything. It's just, null. That could cause errors, so do keep that in mind. However, if you do need a variable to equal to nothing for whatever reason, what you just simply do is you'll just do like the variable's name and then equals null, and then yeah. And then you can also check if things equal to null as well, so yeah. And yeah. Alright, so this will probably be the last thing I do for this tutorial, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be teaching you guys an example of how to make variables equal to nodes, since as I mentioned near the start of this tutorial, I'm pretty sure, not only can variables equal to, values like strings and numbers and, whether something equals to true or false, but it can also equal to actual nodes in your scene as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the 3D view quickly, and I'm going to go add a child node to my parent node. It's going to be a camera 3D, and this is set and we can actually get a view of our scene. And I'm just going to move the camera over here, and then I'm just going to set the camera current, save, and then I'm going to add another node to the scene. So I'm going to add a child node again. This will be a mesh instance 3D. And basically mesh instance 3Ds, they just give like a visual of an object. So what we're going to do is where it says mesh empty, I'm just going to set a empty box mesh, just a new box mesh I mean. And so now we have a box in our scene, and then we have our camera. If we preview what the camera sees, as you can see, it can see the box here. So yeah, also I'm going to add should probably add an environment to the scene as well. You don't have to add an environment to the scene, I'm just doing it for lighting purposes, because, otherwise things will probably look probably a bit darker or so, I don't know, but yeah. You can add an environment to your scene if you want to. So what we're going to do here is we're basically going to be getting this mesh instance 3D, and we're going to be assigning it to a variable in our script. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our script, we're going to create a new variable, and we're going to call this variable box. So we'll just call it something like box. And there are many ways to assign a node to a variable. So one way is by doing, @export var, and then the name of your variable, it's going to be box here. And then what we can do is we can do the 2 dots, and then we can enter the type of what we want this variable to be. So because the thing we want to assign to this variable is a mesh instance 3D, what you would type is mesh instance 3D. So what it's doing is it's setting the type of this variable to a mesh instance 3D. So if we select our main node with our script attached to it, as you can see, we now get the option to assign a node to this variable. So if we click assign, we can now assign our mesh instance 3D to this variable. So there is another way, of course, of assigning variables. Another way of doing it is you could also do box equals, and then you could do, if the thing that you want to assign is a direct child node of the node which your script is attached to, what you can do is you can just simply do $, and then what you will see here is you'll see like the child nodes of your script, of your nodes, sorry, that your script is attached to. So because mesh instance 3D is my my node that I want to assign, I'll go mesh instance 3D, and then boom, that will assign the mesh instance 3D to the actual box. So yeah, there's multiple ways of assigning nodes to variables. They're just a few different ways. But what we're going to be doing here is, so we've got our box variable, it's a mesh instance 3D, and we've got our mesh instance 3D assigned here in the inspector menu. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the A and B variable stuff here, and we're going to actually make it so that it affects the visibility of our box. So we're going to actually be changing the visibility of our box based on what toggle equals to. Alright, so we won't actually need any of this stuff here anymore, so we can just remove this. We won't be needing this in our script. But what we will be doing is where it says if timer is over or equal to max time, So we have toggle equaling to the opposite of what toggle equals to. So what we're going to do underneath that is we're going to do box.visible. Since a lot of nodes in Godot have a variable called visible attached to them, what that basically does is that will affect the visibility of our node. So box.visible will equal to toggle. So what that means is if toggle equals to false, then the visibility of our box will equal to false. However, if toggle equals to true, then the visibility of our box will equal to true. So that's what we're doing here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to now test it out and see how it all goes. So every 5 seconds now, our box visibility should change. And as you can see, the box now went invisible, and then in another 5 seconds, it will then go visible again. So yeah. So anyways guys, that's pretty much the end of this tutorial today. If you do want to learn anything more about variables in Godot, I will leave links to Google documentation, to Godot documentation that might be useful for you in the description below. And yeah, so I'll see you all in the next one. Again, if you did enjoy, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you all in part 3 or any future other videos of mine you end up watching, and bye-bye.